Hi, welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays. I am, of course, Mind Runner, sometimes known as AA Ron. But with me, I'm real excited. This is a huge, awesome moment for me because one of my new good friends that I have met in the Twitterverse, the Xverse, whatever we're calling it. This is a kindred spirit. I feel like a lot of our philosophies are very, very closely in line. I just recently found out he also is a bit of a wrestling fan. I promise this isn't going to be a wrestling podcast, but we may touch into some Phil Brooks stuff here a little bit later. But I'm talking about he is the host of Ignite the Light, which drops every Tuesday, 10 p.m. This is a really awesome podcast. It's in a similar universe as Mental Health Mondays. This is much more. He's going to tell us more about it, but it's very inspiring. If you just need that little extra push, or if you're having one of those cloudy days, listen to an episode of Ignite the Light. It'll ignite the fire inside you, and it'll remind you that you are an awesome human being, and we all are in the same universe together. I am talking about, no, do not adjust your screens. It is not Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It is none other than Positively Chris. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Mind Runner. I appreciate it. I appreciate the introduction. That was powerful, and I feel honored, humbled to be here with you. Like you said, everything you said is spot on. Ignite that light every Tuesday night. Don't miss it. But more importantly, Mental Health Mondays. I'm here for it. I'm here to have this conversation with you and to share my thoughts, man. Let's roll. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And we were just before we started recording, we were talking about the kind of like that improv mentality of yes and you and I were kind of going in a direction where, because that's where when one person says like I'm a Pop-Tart, like I'm doing an improv, and then the other person says, instead of saying no, which would stop the flow of everything, they go, yes, okay, Pop-Tart. Well, don't be afraid of a toaster. And I know that sounds weird, but that mentality of yes and, do you think that could fit in not just improv, but all of life?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is, it's weird to kind of make the parallel, but I'm going to make it anyway. Yeah. It's about having empathy and compassion, right? Like if somebody says something to you, you have two options, right? You can dismiss it or you can accept it, right? There's two options. And yes and is the more accepting, or at least it's less dismissive, right? And whenever we're trying to like have an open mind about things, and I'm a firm believer in doing your own homework, doing your own research. Yes. I think it makes sense to use that yes and approach and make it a part of life, like you said. If you're not using that in life, you're missing out on a bunch of other things that could come your way.
Exactly. And I think you don't have to agree completely, because I mean, Lord knows this, every Thanksgiving, my dad and my relatives, they'll drop the politics bomb, and it's like, they both live in their own echo chambers, and this is the only time they get to talk to somebody on their side. But you're right. There's a level of mutual respect. You don't have to. And you don't have to just like shut down the person if you disagree with them slightly either. Yeah. Do you think that there's a need for us to work on our communication skills a little bit better and not be so, I don't know. It seems like sometimes some people tend to, if you don't agree with this entire list of things I believe, then I don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah. I think that's myopic and short-sighted, right? I think what you're describing, it's a thing where if you put me in a room with anybody, right, and I'm talking like, it doesn't matter who it is, even my wife, and you say, tell me how you feel about this topic, we might agree significantly on certain things, right? It could be something extremely polarizing. We might agree on some of the key things. We're not going to agree on everything. And that's the way it is. Like, we might have some disagreements, but the disagreements are opportunities to learn from one another, right? Like you could dive into the 5 whys, kind of that philosophy, or how to kind of dig into like why people think that way, or what makes you think that. And that's one of my favorite questions to ask, Mind Runner, because so many of the things in life, my most significant learning experiences have come from asking somebody, what makes you say that, or what kind of just letting them kind of talk about what it is that leads them to that kind of that thought process, and being open to learning about it. And if you're willing to be open to be wrong, quite frankly, then that's to me, that's my approach. It's a famous phrase, and I forget who said it exactly. We'll have to throw it into the Google machine at the end of this interview. But it's strong beliefs loosely held, and it's absolutely one of my favorite quotes, probably in the top 5 of all time for me.
Yeah.
I have my own beliefs. I have the right to be wrong about what I believe.
Yeah.
And I I'm willing to be wrong. So that's kind of where my head's at. And kind of when you ask that, it's like, yeah, I'm never going to agree with anyone 100% on everything or on anything. Unless it's like something really basic about, fundamental human values, right? Like, I think
or candy corn.
But like, oh yeah, that's one of my hot button topics right now. I tell people that all the time. It's not my favorite thing, but again, like those are opinions. It's not first principles or facts, right? Like everyone has their likes and dislikes. So hopefully that answered your question. I think I did, but
no, absolutely no. And like I really like that quote, and I'll tell my Jamie or whoever to look that up. I don't have a Jamie, but but
I got that reference though.
I think that it's interesting too, because as elementary school teacher, we spend a lot of time when we teach science on the scientific method and scientific inquiry. And I think it's really important to drive home that when a student has a hypothesis and then they run their experiment and the data shows that their hypothesis is wrong, that doesn't mean that they are wrong. And we've had that moment several times. We had a great moment where we had we're doing magnets, and one of the students' hypothesis was we had these different magnets, and they had different color stickers on them. And he said, well, I think that the red magnets are stronger than the other magnets. And a couple of kids were kind of mocking him about it. And I said, no, we're going to run with this hypothesis. And we went through the whole experiment, and he proved that the red magnets were the same strength as the other magnets. He proved it with data. And then we had this conversation. Does the fact that his hypothesis was wrong, does that make him a bad scientist? Not at all. And I feel like that transcends to anything, not just science. That I think sometimes we got to be careful. Do you think people sometimes they find their own identity in a belief, and then that's what makes it harder for them to change?
Yeah, you're speaking my language, Mind Runner. Here's the thing. That's a difficult thing to disentangle for most people, and especially kids, right? It's hypothesis testing is a fundamental concept, not just in science, but I find it powerful in the business world. I'm in sales, and if I say this is what I think is going to happen if we spend our energy on this account, if we focus on winning a sale or a deal with this account, here's what I think is going to happen next. Like, you start to kind of build then, like, here's my thought process, right? Yeah. Here's what I believe will happen. And it's okay to be wrong, but the hypothesis testing applies to so many different components of the world. And it's hard, like I said, to disentangle. I wrote it down, that a hypothesis can be wrong, but it doesn't mean the human is wrong, right? Yeah. It's the willingness to be wrong that helps us learn. And yeah. I've told people this, and again, I live my life by quotes because I think that they can resonate with other people, not just myself. But another one that kind of is relevant here is that idea that you either win or you learn. And if you approach life that way, I'm not telling people that they have to believe that even, but for me, I'm a little bit of a late bloomer. I didn't go to business school until I was in my late 30s. Everyone was at least 10 years younger than I was, had just a different kind of mindset on the world, which is fine. But I had to kind of learn these things later in life. And the reality is that you can be wrong, but being wrong doesn't mean that that you're less of a person, especially if you think about why you were wrong and learn from it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting. You said you either win or you learn. Like you don't. It's not win or lose. Yeah, there's no lose in that equation. You either win or you learn. You learn from that, and I think that's really important. And like you mentioned, being a late bloomer, I didn't even start my teaching career until my mid-30s. That was like I was actually in sales, and I'd have some sales questions that I wanted to bounce off you, but like it's one of those things where I like when I was in my late 20s, I thought I had the whole world figured out. I said, I got this. I know what I'm doing. And then it was like the next 7 years, the world kicked my teeth in. And it was like I had to learn some real hard lessons. But one of them was that like a lot of my beliefs whenever I would be presented with evidence that is contrary to it, I had to sit back and really, really detach myself from what I was believing or what I felt. And who I was at 15 was different than 28, but who I was at 28 is different now. And I'm so glad that I was able to go through that. But it does seem like though that a lot of times, and sometimes it's the empty cans that make the most noise. We hear the ones that aren't really thinking through, and they're the ones we hear a lot. And I always like to use the analogy that I love Twitter X, I love social media, but social media, it's like before social media, every village had an idiot, and now on social media, all the village idiots have one voice and it's loud, so it's like, oh no. But kind of going back, with that though, I do feel like, and this is kind of going off of the Twitter spaces that we've been hopping into. And last night I was listening and I was writing down a bunch of, I had Post-its of stuff that I was writing down as I was listening. They talked a little bit about like who you surround yourself with and what you consume. How important is it to, and I'm not saying at the risk of not getting into an echo chamber, but how important is it to surround yourself not necessarily with like-minded people, but with people that are there to support you, or that like, and vice versa, like the opposite of a toxic environment? How important is that?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mindrunner. Here's my thought process, or how I think about that is, we all have a certain limited duration on this planet, right? Like we can't guarantee tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's so many limitations. And I know that for me, I want to surround myself with people that are going to inspire me, but not necessarily agree with everything I say. Like we talked about a few minutes ago, right? It's not about you having to agree with me on things, right? Like that's not what builds my trust in you. And this is kind of off the cuff here, but as I kind of walk through it in my head, that's what I'm thinking is that, me, I don't have to agree with everything you say to feel like I can build a bond with you. It's more than that, right? It's something else entirely, actually. But you want to surround yourself with people that are going to elevate you and keep you buoyant. There's this phrase, or there's this concept going to kind of tying into sales in a minute. There's a book called along the lines of Everyone's in Sales, right? We're all in sales. It's kind of a concept, and it's by Daniel Pink, I want to say. There's a phrase, there's an acronym in that book about how it's like the ABC acronym.
Always be closing.
Well, it sounds like it, right? Yeah. But the B stands for buoyant, and in order to kind of sell your vision or your message, that buoyancy, that keeping people afloat, is necessary, right? And I think if you're always a Debbie Downer, you're going to find that getting your message across and getting through to what you're trying to achieve is going to be a lot harder.
Yeah.
And so it's something like you want to surround yourself with people that are going to keep you buoyant, that are going to help you, help remind you of kind of the good in the world. And that's what, at least that's what I want to do, right? Like I want to surround myself with people that inspire me, that elevate me, that are smarter than me. I mean, the whole phrase about how if you find yourself in a room and you're the smartest person in the room, find yourself a different room. Like, And for me, that's kind of part of my why for being on X, is the idea that I'm learning by asking questions, even if it's just a simple question about candy corn. If there's something that people like more than it, or that there's a reason why they don't consume it, or the reason why they do love it. Like, I want to learn more about humans, like on the human level, and also learn more about the world as kind of a tangential piece of it. And I can't do that if I'm constantly, at people's throats and trying to tear them down. And so for me, it's important to surround yourself with people that inspire you, but also for me, it's I think everyone in this world has something to teach me. And I think, speaking to a teacher, I think that probably resonates.
Absolutely. In fact, it's very much like you said, it's sometimes you're always learning. You always got to be a student of your business, and in education, you got to be a student of your business. There's a reason why there's all kinds of professional development. If I became a teacher in 1975 and never changed, I would be obsolete today with all of technology, with all of the things that they have. A lot of thought processes, a lot of beliefs in society. I mean, in the 80s, what it meant to come out as gay in the 80s compared to today is so different. There's so many things that the only thing that has stayed the same is candy corn being the best candy in Halloween, because it's so good that they don't need to advertise for it.
Yeah. Yes, and
yes.
I think that there are other candy types that are probably on par with it. How about that? I'll say that.
Well, I think that we could do without those marshmallow peanut looking things. I think we could do away with Peeps. I think we could do away with a few of those.
I have a pretty strong opinion about Peeps, and I've shared it with Ben and the rest of the crew, and I don't know if the rest of the world will bash me for it, but I'm a fan of them. I think that they, to me, they're inspiring, and because they remind me of my childhood, and I have fond memories of those days. So I'll say that.
So you're a big fan of Peeps, and how long have you been part of Al Qaeda? I mean, how long have you been with ISIS? I mean,
yeah, well done.
Yeah, I know that. Thank you, Craig Ferguson, for that joke. But just kind of getting back to, and this was kind of an example, though. It seems to be there's a fine line between, like, there seems to be two extremes where on one side you can surround yourself, if you're stuck in a toxic environment. You're surrounded by people that are just Debbie Downers all the time. You see that in any business. In teaching, you got there's a difference between teachers venting to you, and then you get those one or two teachers that everything is negative and it just brings you down, and then it rubs off on you, and then you're having a worse day, and it has a negative effect. But there's also that line where if you have nothing but positivity, you kind of get those American Idol moms, like where you're a terrible singer, but you're the best singer, baby. If you stick yourself into an echo chamber, there's no growth. It's kind of like you say, it's like if you're the smartest person in the room, find a better room. You want to find those people that are supportive of you, but also challenge you, so that iron sharpens iron. And it's like, and that'll steel man your arguments, not pad them and not tear them down. So, like, where is that line?
I that's a good point, Mindrunner. Here's kind of my approach to it, is that I think you'll find when you find your people, and I think there's this phrase called that I just learned yesterday, actually, called soul tribe. When you find your soul tribe, people that are kindred spirits, you'll find that, going back to what I said earlier, they're not going to agree with you on everything, especially like we had a conversation yesterday in one of the spaces. Our good friend Blaze was talking about Neuralink, and I think you were there for that.
Yeah.
About injecting yourself implanting yourself with a chip. And so I think, and I'm not going to speak for what she wants to do, but like, for me, I struggle with that, with the concept of doing that. And it's not from any, like, it's not because I disagree with her as a person, right? Mm-hmm. but we don't agree on that, and that's fine. It's okay to not be not want to do what somebody else is doing, right? And she might have a reason for doing it that she wants, and that's again, and I might not have that same reason, and she might say, well, we could have an argument about why it's important to do it, and we might have a passionate, heated argument about it, and that's okay. Like, she might teach me something about it, and I think going back to what I said earlier, it's like, as long as we're willing to learn from each other in our day-to-day interactions, I think that's kind of at its core. Because like I said, unless you have a clone of yourself, you're going to find yourself in situations, even with your best friends, where you're not going to agree with each other, and that's the key thing. It's like, you're going to find that iron will sharp iron over time. You just have to find your soul tribe. You have to find those people that you connect with first on a human level, that you spend time with, and that you can trust, right? And once you kind of establish that, you will find over time, week in and week out, that there's that one thing that you said that I don't necessarily agree with, or that maybe I don't think I would actually like doing, or maybe you like candy corn and I don't. we can still be friends.
Yeah.
Like, at its core, that's the thing, Mindrunner.
And it doesn't lessen the friendship. In fact, I've found it strengthens the friendship when you do have those moments, because that builds more trust. It's similar to in the classroom. I like the saying where, if the kids need to know that you're strong enough teacher to stand up to them, so that you can be a strong enough teacher to stand up for them. And there's that structure that they crave, and I think that's important for all people. Is that I know, like, I think it's a stronger trust to know when you find your soul tribe. I liken it, of course, to the blind melon girl in the bee costume at the end of the video of No Rain. She finds all the other bees, and that's her soul tribe. I find that a lot. I found that with the Champagne Room crew and everybody on the Twitter Spaces, that it's it's like there's a stronger trust when you know the people that you find, they're your soul tribe, but that they're not always going to agree with you. In fact, they're going to challenge you in ways that are supportive, but also in a way that makes you're either going to steel man. It's kind of like that win or learn. It's you're either going to steel man your argument, which makes you make your argument stronger, or you're going to find a new bit of data that maybe might have you change your view a little bit. And to me, I think that's the most supportive of all.
It's powerful stuff. If you find people who, when you have a conversation with them and they think, well, hey, that sounds amazing. Also, on a related note, have you thought about this? Like, again, totally.
Yes, and
not exactly, but totally non-committal. And just like throwing out potential suggestions that might benefit you. Like, again, at no, if you give without intention of receipt, right? Like, if you don't expect a return, right? If you're starting to if you reduce the transactional nature of your interpersonal relationships, you'll find that life improves dramatically. I'll just throw that out there as a little nugget.
No, absolutely. And that touches on a topic that I kind of walked into and listened to before, about being authentic. Do you feel like there's a need today, not just in personal relationships, but even like in how we receive our news from the media, how we, who we interact with commercially? It seems like that there's such a mistrust out there that we crave genuine, like someone coming or being genuine is so refreshing. How important is it to be, people talk about being your social media character or your brand, but at what point do you have to, where you risk sacrificing being genuine? And do you feel like people crave someone being genuine rather than being some superstar or what have you?
It's a good question, Mindrunner. I'll say this off. The first thing I thought of was that I'm trying to unpack it as this: social media, it shows you in many ways how people want to be seen. It's an idealized version of oneself, right? And so you see my favorite selfie with my favorite filter on it, then it makes things look a lot cleaner than probably how I am perceived, or how I do look at, when I look at myself in the mirror, I may not see that same person. And that's, again, I don't think there's a right or wrong about that. I think especially if we talk about mental health, if it's improving your mental health to do that, and you don't listen to the negative comments on those posts, then by all means, I think that's a fine thing to do, especially if it's boosting your self-esteem. But going to like the authenticity piece and kind of being genuine, I'll say this, and it might be controversial, that nobody's owed like an explanation of me on social media, or and again, this might be a bit rude, but like I mean it like I don't expect it from other people either. So it's not just me, but the idea that,
where's my pearls? I got to clutch them.
I know, clutch them right now. I don't know. But the idea, like, people aren't owed like some sort of explanation about why I was offline. They're not owed an explanation of my health issues that I may have or may not have. They're not owed an explanation of why I'm online at midnight in a space. Like, nobody's owed an explanation of that. And as long as I'm comfortable saying that to myself, then I think that I can embrace, I can be a little more genuine when I'm interacting with people, as long as I understand it myself, right? And as long as I embrace that fundamental piece. Granted, because the thing is, like, how we are on social media or how we are online, I don't expect you to say, hey, I know Chris like the back of my hand, and after this interaction, like, you're not gonna be able to say that. You know me based on the conversation, and that's fantastic. I love sharing this, but I wouldn't say the same about you, Mind Runner. I wouldn't say like, we had this 1 hour talk or whatever, and now he's my best
I got
friend.
his number. Yeah.
Yeah, guys. But I just think that we need to make sure that, like, there's a clear understanding of that before we talk about the genuine or the authenticity piece, because I've met probably about close to a dozen people from social media in person, and what I found is that they want to meet again afterward, right? So this shows a sliver of who I am, and people like that, but it's not all of me, right? Yeah. And those who I open up my personal life to will be the ones I meet in person. Like, and that's just the way it is for me. So if people are judging me and saying I'm not authentic because of who I am on social media, that's intentional, is what I would say. And I think that's kind of how I think about it.
I think you're absolutely right. You touched on it. There's a difference between being genuine. Like, being genuine is not necessarily being completely open with everything. It's like, like you're not, it's not a lack of being genuine for you to keep things from being out there, because that's, there's no such thing as lack of being genuine by omission, if that makes sense, like, and you need to be protected. Plus, I think that's even not just social media, but I like when I'm in the classroom, I'm Mr. Burden. When I'm with my colleagues, I'm Aaron, or Aaron, or whoever, I done messed up Aaron. When I'm home, I'm a husband. When I'm visiting my mom, I'm her son. Those are all, and I mean, there's things I don't tell my mom. I don't get into, but it's like you can be all of those things. Plus, a lot of times people project their perceptions of you onto you. What was interesting for about since around 2016, this is not a political reason. This is like I don't like to get into politics, but when we do talk about it, it's like I try to still be very like listen and learn. But Trump was doing a speech, and I kept noticing this lady behind them, and she had these crazy eyebrows, like these really crazy, and it took away from me focusing on anything else going on. I'm like, this lady's crazy looking, to the point, and it became an inside joke with me and some of my peers. I took a snapshot of her, and I used her as my avatar on Twitter for years. And so for so long, all you saw was this lady with these crazy eyebrows, and I didn't even think anything of it. And then I would come and go on Twitter. And this was back in 2016 when I started doing the thing. And for years, I didn't even think about it. And then when I started using Twitter more, so many people, I noticed they treated me almost like different because I think they thought I was that woman. They thought that's who I was. And in their defense, that's their only interaction with me is this avatar. So kind of going to what you're saying. And, so how many people think you're Chris Gordon-Levitt,
But a lot of people do actually, but yeah.
But it's like, it's important, I think, for what you said about we don't owe, it's not our fault if I'm not trying to catfish anybody. It'd be different if I'm
exactly.
like, hey, how about a little, send me an eggplant pic or something, the little emoji. But it's not, it'd be different if it was a malicious intent, but I don't think it's like, it's not my fault if you have a perception of me that's different. I know who I am.
Yep.
I'm comfortable with being who I am. And I think that's important for us to do is this is me. And if there's a misunderstanding, I'll explain it. But it kind of goes back. I'm not being less genuine because my avatar is Scarlett Johansson or Chris Hemsworth. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I want to say something real quick on this, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Something happened just yesterday that's relevant to this. Somebody who I've interacted with on X, on the X app, formerly known as Twitter. I've been in their spaces. I've interacted with them in DMs. Posted something saying along the lines of, he had sushi for breakfast, and I responded and said, hey, I have sushi for lunch once a week. If you're ever in town, let me know, and we'll do lunch. And one of the comments was creep and a big red alert. Yeah, and it was somebody, just random person I don't follow.
Yeah,
random person comments the word creep, that red alarm alert thing. And so I replied back, and I did it I tried to be mindful of the words I use. And I said, look, I appreciate the feedback. You don't know me. I've interacted with this person multiple times, and in private and privately and otherwise.
Yeah.
If you have an issue with me, let's talk it out on an X space. If you're able to talk, let's talk through this. But the reality is that you don't know me. You don't know my history with this person. And if you're quick to judge, then that's it's not really a reflection of me. It's a reflection of you.
Yeah.
And so I try to be mindful of that. Again, maybe this person's having a bad day. Try to be respectful in my reply. Also willing to have a conversation. And I didn't get a response, which to be honest, I didn't expect a response. But I was hoping that this person would say that's I think that's a creep move, whatever. Nothing came of it, which kind of, maybe I shouldn't have replied now that I think about it. But the reality is that I'm trying to explain something to other people, and by doing that, I'm not going to back down from who I am.
Yeah.
And if I offer to take a friend to lunch who I've interacted with here for months, spoken on their spaces, interacted with them in DMs, we've helped each other educate each other about certain things related to Web3. There's so much going on that people don't see. Mm-hmm. Kind of the main point here I'm trying to make is not just in social media, but in real life. I've seen people apologize for taking a break from social media, and it's I immediately reply to those, and I'm like, don't ever do that again. Don't apologize for living your real life.
Yeah.
Because that matters more. And I hate to, that again, it might sound counterintuitive given my name's Positively Chris, but the reality is that you don't want to miss real life, because real life isn't happening on the X app with all the back and forth that's going on. It's a fun app to use, and I've met a lot of really awesome people on it. But what's happening in front of you in person, it needs to be your priority. At least for me, it is. And I hope that other people don't see that they have to apologize for being away from an app. It's these apps didn't exist 25 years ago when I was a teenager. They didn't exist.
We drank from the fire hose, or drank from the garden hose. And
that's right.
We were outside till the lights came on. I feel like there are some people, I want nothing but the best for them. But I do think there are people that's the social media fills such a huge gap inside them. It kind of goes back to that, becomes their identity. So when they leave, they say that because they want to see who missed them. And I don't mean that, and and I think it's because that's their social media is filling that hole. But what you said is so important, is those are the people more than anyone that need to really go out and touch grass. Now, who knows what's going on in their lives? You know, I know some. There's a girl that's a wrestling fan, and she goes to she spends almost her entire paycheck going to these wrestling events, and it's not just one. She goes to WWE, she goes to AEW, she goes to Impact, and she vents about her mom. Her mom's always yelling at her, and I've been trying to get her on the show, but I think she's a little funny about it.
I think I know who she is. I know who you're talking about too.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, and she's great, but I think she her presence on social media is this person, but she sounds, when she shares about her real life, sounds like her real life is so miserable and depressing. So she immerses herself online, and I think sometimes she gets caught up in that too. And it's almost like, yeah, you've got to find time to go touch some grass. You've got to really, it's healthy to do that. With my students, whenever it's time to go to recess, I'd always say, all right, close your Chromebooks. Let's go touch some grass.
I love that. And I think there's this concept of the third place, right? And I think it was a Starbucks CEO who created this concept, or at least that's when I first heard of it, was the idea of the former CEO of Starbucks. I think it was Howard Schultz was his name. Yeah. I think this is one of his concepts. I could be mistaken. Again, the Google machine will prove us wrong.
Yeah. Jamie, get on that.
We'll get Jamie to look that up.
Yeah.
But the reality is that we all need something like a hobby, something, a third place, somewhere to go, because you have that home, you have work, and then there's that third thing. And a lot of people, as they get older, don't have that thing. Yeah. They lose touch with their friends as you get older. Like, decades pass, your close friends become fewer and fewer, and that's also a struggle with, again, mental health. I think people's mental health start to decline because of the fact that you don't have those close male friends, especially if you're a male. Like, I think that's kind of, for me, that's been particularly resonant. But the idea that, that people should touch grass, I mean, I think it's important, whether it's, again, homework, and then you spend an hour or two at Starbucks sipping coffee and, and reading a book, like, that's perfectly fine. I encourage that. Like, that's a way to spend your time that isn't immersed in things that may be things that bring you down. Like you said, I think, I don't want to say her name, but she might have a terrible family life, or her family life might be rough. Like, it might not be as enjoyable. So she's immersing herself in these pro wrestling events, or doing things that kind of that inspire her and ignite her light.
Bring her joy.
Bring her joy. I think those things that really bring that out of her, that's what we all could use something like that. And I just encourage people to think about what that is for them. And for me, lately, it's been geocaching. I got into that in late May, early June. I don't know if you know much about that, Mindrunner, but I did that. I started doing that for about the last 3 or 4 months. Took a bit of a breather as I got sick over the past week and a half. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm having fun touching grass, like literally touching grass, like going into the woods. One of the guys who doesn't even live here anymore, he plays
into the woods with Norwood.
Well, I would if he was here, but no, it was one of the former key geocachers in the area. He left, and now he lives in Missouri. He went into the forest, in the woods out here, and placed a bunch of stuff out here, but it's found maybe once every other year at this point. So I go looking for these things he's placed that they're buried under a rock in the middle of this forest 30 miles out of town, and it's they take 30 minutes to 45 minutes to get to, just driving, and then hiking is another 45 minutes. So it's an event, and to me that's fun though, right? That's something that I can do to kind of be at peace with myself, to be at peace with nature. It gets me away from the computer, which is nice. I think everyone needs something like that.
All right, I think you and I need to co-author a new blockbuster movie starring Nicolas Cage called Henry David Thoreau's Treasure, where go out somewhere buried in Walden Pond is this huge cache, this huge treasure.
I love that idea. We can create like a modernized version of Walden or something like that. Yeah, I'm up for it, man.
There is something to that too. I remember 11th grade was such a cool moment because we read about transcendentalism and Emerson and Thoreau. And Emerson's got one of my favorite quotes where he says, "Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string." And what I like about that kind of goes with that. It counters that imposter syndrome. And I think sometimes it goes with it's a good balance to that other side of always being willing to learn, always, don't be so like stoned into your own belief that you can't change it. But also, I think a lot of us, we tend to focus on how different we are, but I think us humans are a lot more similar than we are different. And the way I interpret Emerson's quote is trust what your intentions were. You may have gotten the minutia details, what have you. You might have gotten some of that wrong, but trust yourself, because every heart vibrates to an iron string, which means you probably had good intentions. And I think a lot of us, we may be coming at it differently, but and from our different perspectives and upbringings, what have you. But do you think we're more alike than different, and maybe we need to focus more on that? And then I want to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think the concept of again, the being alike or being different thing is it's important to talk about and make sure that people are aware of the reality that we breathe the same oxygen. We all have the same type of not the same blood type, but we all have blood running through our system. Yeah. There's certain core fundamental truths about humans, right? And I think you're talking about humanity, but at least that's what I'm hearing when you say it in that quote. It's like, and given the context of the world and kind of how it's going right now, with things all over the world, and it's in the news.
Yeah.
It's a worthwhile reminder to think about, what's the human component, right? That we can share, that we share with other people. I see people walking their dogs in front of my house all the time, and I may not look anything like them, but the reality is that I could go out there any day of the week, say hi to them, smile at them, and that can make their day.
Yeah.
It's that simple, right? And I don't have to look like them. I don't have to have a dog, which I don't even have. But the fact that I can bring a smile to your face by just saying hi is it's just a reminder, right? That we have so many things in common that those differences are. I think they're not worth really fighting about, to be honest with you. And I talked about this, I think, with our friend Jay, about I like to learn languages. Foreign languages mean a lot to me. They're a sign of respect. I think when you're going to another country and you meet somebody who speaks that language, you want to try to at least introduce yourself with that language, show that you've made an effort. The way I learn foreign languages, or one of the ways that helps me, is by listening to their music and listening to songs in that language and repeating them and then printing out the lyrics. And I kind of do a deep dive, which maybe is kind of over the top to some people, but the reality is that even if I don't understand the words, I can understand the intent behind the words, the way it sounds, the energy and the passion behind it. All of that is expressed. You don't need to know the language to get the intent. And like what you said about the intention and the intent, I think that's kind of the overarching thing that we need to be thinking about, because we're going to all make mistakes. We're all going to fail at things. We're all going to go into things with the best of intentions, and it might make people upset, but we're trying to survive out here in a really cruel world.
Yeah.
And we have a lot more in common than I think we do have as differences.
Absolutely. And you talk about learning languages. When I lived in Japan when I'm between 6 and 8 years old, and I used to watch. They were the Power Rangers before they became the Power Rangers in the U.S. They were the Taiyo Sentai, and Masked Rider was Kamen Rider Super One, and I learned a lot of Japanese from watching those shows. Now that comes in handy if we ever get invaded by ninja robots, because then I can say "Ario mite, sore wa kyunyu wo acha," and I have no idea what I'm saying, but I think it's something along the lines of, "All right, you've crossed the line this time, and your evil will be defeated by us, the Power Rangers." But it's so I got that going for us if we ever get invaded by Japanese speaking robot ninjas.
I love it.
I got that part of our thing taken care of. But yeah, it's I think we saw a lot of times we spend too much time focus on the differences, and I think we do that with ourselves too, because I always try to tell my students, just compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Don't compare yourself to the other kid, because sometimes they'll get upset, like this kid got 100% on the test and I got a 50%. I said, yeah, but you got 30% last time. That's a 20% growth. And and I sometimes, just like we try to focus about student growth in school. How important is it for self-reflection on your own growth and versus, like, if you're trying to make a change yourself or trying to grow as a person, how important is it to set realistic goals for your own personal growth?
I love what we're talking about here, Mind Runner. I'm not going to lie. Because you mentioned something that's, and it's important to set goals. Don't get me wrong, but like just to kind of go what you just said a minute ago about like how your students were kind of comparing themselves to others and not themselves. There's this book that I finished, and I'm looking at it right now on my phone on Audible. Actually, the audiobook's I think only 5 hours long, or it's not that long. It's called The Gap and the Gain. I encourage everyone to look into it. The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And what it is, it talks about how we spend as humans so much time comparing ourselves to the ideal or to somebody who did better. Mm-hmm. And that's called living in the gap, right? You're living in this gap where there are unmet expectations or unmet realities, right? Mm-hmm. The gain is comparing yourself to where you were when you started, or that 30% that now you're at 50%. That's the gain. And we need to be willing to remember that and think about, okay, this is where I was. It's every day you wake up and you say, like, I want to be 1% better, right? Like, I've heard people say that all the time. It's the same thing. It's the same concept, but you're trying to think about it from like a larger, like a bigger picture thing, and say, I went to the gym 5 days out of the week last week. This week I've only made it 2, but guess what? 3 weeks ago you went to the gym 0 times. Mm-hmm. Like it's just worth kind of thinking about things from a different frame or from a different lens, rather than comparing yourself to like these athletes who you see on TV who are like spend so much time in the gym and are, like it's not necessarily the healthiest way to spend our energy and our time. And I think it's just like that's something that I think resonates with me in terms of comparison. And you want to talk about imposter syndrome. We don't want to let that go either. But that kind of is relevant in a sense, because we're talking about, again, setting goals. It's important to set goals of where you want to be. Every year I try to do my Moleskine. I try to fill it out with a bunch of different goals for the year. I don't always stick to it, but I try. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I make kind of like a plan for the year. And it's important to at least measure yourself to who you were in the past versus measuring yourself to people who you see that are successful, who have had all this experience doing it. And it's not, I don't think that's a fair comparison to yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not really fair to others who are watching you go through, because like, wait a minute, like this is, you're they want to see you succeed, especially the people that are part of your soul tribe. Like I said, they want to see you succeed, and seeing you compare yourself to these like rock stars who are doing it already, they don't want that for you either. Like if they're part of your like true tribe, like they want you to be thinking about where you were back in the day, and then how you've gotten to where you are now. Like that's kind of where my head's at on that.
Is it dangerous to compare your happiness to what someone else's success, you think?
Yeah, I think it is. I really think it is. And I've had this conversation on one of the podcast episodes. I want to say I could be wrong, but I want to say we talked about happiness needs to be something that comes from within, and it can't be from external things. And there's a concept called it's called it's I forget the exact phrasing. It'll come to me in a second, but it's called the hedonism. It's like the hedonism mechanism, and the idea being that we think that we can find happiness from, say, winning the lottery, right? Say tomorrow you win the Powerball, or say yesterday you won the Powerball, which was a huge deal. Say you won the Powerball. Well, that's fine. You will find happiness and you will find joy, but it'll be temporary. Mm-hmm. And you will find it, but then there's this only so far you're going to go with happiness. And then you're going to kind of have this steady kind of medium baseline that you're going to come back to, right? It's like a boomerang effect. You're going to go back to where you generally were. Like you might have like a temporary boost in your happiness and your mood, whatever, but that can happen from getting a new Tesla, right? Or, like you buy a new car, you're so happy about things. You boost your mood, you're happy.
I had one of the clips from Mental Health Mondays go super viral. Yeah. And it was amazed at how it went. But that's the thing, is it's one video. And if I compare the rest of my videos to that video, my podcast is doing terrible.
Terrible, right?
But I mean, it's like, if you take that out of the curve, you take that out of the equation, I've got a steady growth of viewership. It's just that one goes viral. It's kind of like that's that one, like you win the lottery. It's like, great. But yeah, exactly. It's almost like, there's that instant gratification versus long-term lasting happiness.
Yeah. Hedonic adaptation. I just looked it up. I had it up here. Hedonic adaptation. And like, we just have to practice mindfulness and gratitude. Like that's the way to kind of counteract it. If you're willing to, and that's part of the reason why I post a good morning reading every morning on X. It's not because I'm trying to game the system or whatever, right? Some people think that that's kind of the plan. No, the idea is that, like, guess what? I'm providing some sort of content. I'm expressing my gratitude for people actually interacting with me. And guess what? That might actually be something that keeps them going for a couple hours in the morning tomorrow, like, or this morning. Like that's something that I think people sort of forget, is that your actions now aren't just now. Like what you do, say for instance, you go to, or you get out, you end this call or end this conversation, you go in your car and you drive to the nearest, coffee shop, and, on your way there, you let somebody, get into your lane because you're feeling kind. There's a song by Geggy Talk called Wherever You Are from the late 90s that you should look up. Letting somebody, let me change lanes while I was driving my car. Like you let somebody drive, let me, like, guess what? That might be what gets them to their job on time. That might be what helps them feel like the world isn't conspiring against them. Like there's so many kind of moments that are kind of cascades that people forget about. That there's more than just this is what happens and that's all that happens. And I think when we remember that, I think it's easier to have gratitude, because the reality is, like, it's kind of a miracle that we're even on this planet talking to one another. 2023 Mindrunner, we're doing this. Like, we don't have to be on the phone or on a landline. We don't have to be in person. Exactly, telegraph. We don't have to be in person. It would be fun to do that. Don't get me wrong, but we don't have to be in the same room to have this conversation. We should be extremely grateful for even the simple things like that. Like that's something that people sometimes take for granted. And that's kind of where, what I think about that.
Yeah, I agree. Gratitude. And it's funny because I tend to be very idealistic, but also very cynical too. And I think what it is it's like, I'm a critical thinker, but I also can be idealistic, and you would think those clash, but it's kind of more like this, where like because some people will use, you've got to be grateful, gratitude's the secret, manifest, but it's there's a lot to really being, authentically grateful for what you do have, because if you focus on what's missing, you're going to be depressed, but you're going to ignore what the gifts that you do have. I mean, we're having this conversation online. I mean, the internet, to try to explain the internet to somebody in the 1800s, it's
couldn't do it.
What witchcraftery is? This is the work of gypsies. What are you talking about? Yeah, that kind of stuff. And then the other side too is the you mentioned, like, every morning putting out Positively Grows, putting out some kind of positive message. And this goes back to our man, the Chaos is his middle name, Ben Chaos Danger.
Yes.
Talk about an old soul in a young body. But I love that this dude puts out, like, he talks about paying it forward. And I know there was a movie about it and all that stuff, but it does, when you put, you kind of, like, it is kind of like what you get, what you put out there.
Absolutely.
If you're putting out negativity is going to come back. But if you're putting out that positivity, it helps. Now, sometimes I get into that existential crisis where, all right, if I let this person in, it's going to help his life, but then am I going to be late? And then is that person behind me going to, you get into that moment? But you're right. Yeah. It's just that one little kind gesture could completely change someone's day for the better. All right, we're going to take a quick break from solving all of the world's problems to tell you about a good friend of mine and a service she's offering. Are you tired of feeling like your dream financial future is out of reach? Are you struggling with overwhelming debt, trying to pay off your home early, or simply wanting to give more? Well, my good friend Vanessa Rudder Jackson is here to help. An educator and military veteran, Vanessa is here to guide you through the confusion and make your dream financial future a reality. With her certified financial coaching services, she'll help you create a personalized plan that sets you up to win with money. As an educator and a mother of two, Vanessa understands the challenges of scraping by and stretching paychecks. She's been there, and she knows how to navigate the financial landscape to help you thrive. Don't let financial stress hold you back any longer. Take the first step towards financial freedom today with Rudder Jackson Financial Coaching. Reach out to Vanessa today for a free 45-minute consultation at vaRudder34@gmail.com or go to tinyurl.com/RJMoneyCoach. That's vaRudder34@gmail.com or tinyurl.com/RJMoneyCoach. Remember, it's never too late to take control of your finances and achieve your dreams. Start your journey to financial freedom with Rudder Jackson Financial Coaching today. All right, now let's get back to solving the world's problems with the most charming host on the interwebs.
I want to make sure that this is abundantly clear, because I think, we're almost an hour in, and I don't know that I've even said this, but my username doesn't mean that things are always going great for me, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not I don't want people to think that life doesn't suck sometimes, or that life doesn't get hard for me. It absolutely does. Every day, I hate my alarm, for one. Like, it's super loud no matter how much I try to fix it. I have an Apple product. I have an Apple phone. It's always the loudest alarm possible, even though I try to dial it down every night before I have to go to bed. So that's annoying. Like, I always wake up with just this massive headache because I don't drink enough water before bed. Like, there's all sorts of reasons why things feel awful for me, like for every first thing in the morning. And I have hardships. Like, I've had hardships for a lot of my life, but I choose not to dwell on them on social media and bring people into that negative spiral. Cause I could totally do that. And get clicks and likes and engagement, but that's not really me. Like, I'm focused on my future and on these connections that we're building, and again, learning by asking questions is the first 4 words on my profile for a reason. It's because I'm here to learn. I'm not here to have to relive my life again. Right. Like, I'm here to move forward, and because life is tough for all of us. We're all struggling, myself included. Like, it's hard. Like, I'm a friend of mine, his a coworker of mine, actually, his stepfather passed away, and he couldn't have been older than like his mid 40s, early 50s. Like things are happening right now that are completely tragic and that touch close to home to me. And so like they're it's tough, but I don't want people to think that because my name is Positively Chris that that's all that happens to me.
Yeah,
there's more.
There's because, and we've talked about this on the podcast before with a previous guest about the concept that the difference between toxic positivity and realistic positivity, because there is a, like, sometimes a person's view of positivity is that, because you see some folks that are like, everything's great, and they got that crazy look in their eyes, their smile doesn't match their eyes, and and we've had an education when we get these people that are experts but haven't been in a classroom in 10 years, and they come down and they give us all this helpful advice that doesn't work, and they go, yes, if you just think about your why, you're gonna do great. Yeah, I'm thinking about my why. Why am I here? Why am I not in my classroom getting it ready for the kids? Why am I not doing lesson plans and making copies? But that's the thing is there I think sometimes the concept of positivity, people tend to lean towards the toxic part, but true positivity is not the absence of negativity. It's staying positive in spite of the negative things that happen to you. It's I'm gonna bring up a wrestler, one of my favorite wrestlers, Willow Nightingale. She has a saying. She says it's something along the lines of nothing matters, smile anyways. And I think that kind of leans into, things are going to happen to everybody. You have no idea, even if someone's smiling and seems like they're happy, you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. You have no idea what's going on. But it only makes it worse to then get yourself, into the pits of the swamps of sadness, like in to use a Never-Ending Story that rest in peace, Artex. But but like,
I remember that reference. I know that movie. Yeah.
But it's like, I think that but being positive isn't the absence of negativity. It's being positive in spite of the bad things that happen to you.
Correct. And it's worth just clarifying that for folks who maybe haven't heard you say that or heard me say that. It's that there's more to me than what you might see on my profile. I have a lot of followers. I'm grateful for those followers. I don't think that makes me a better or worse person either. Like that's the thing. It's like I have a lot of followers. That's great. I love them. I love them all. But it's not really. That brings me some joy, but it's not going to be like the end all be all. I want my message to resonate with people. I hope people understand my point and my perspective and why I'm on X and why I'm on social media more generally. But yeah, I mean, like, and it's worth also remembering that the number of followers isn't a value system about how you are, who you are as a person, so I wanted to call that out as well, because again, I'm grateful for it, but it doesn't mean that I'm a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked earlier, I think this is something I learned because I've actually signed up with vidIQ, which they deal with YouTube videos, and they're really cool. It's because I've been getting some coaching advice on kind of how things to think about shaping my videos. And I've already changed my thumbnails, which I think is for the better. But one of the things they said early on that really clicked with me, and it's kind of and I agree with it, because is they say don't, and I think this applies to Twitter, X, and all social media, don't try to game the algorithm, or don't try to be, make your videos to beat the algorithm. Make videos for the audience, and the algorithm will follow through. I think if you're focused on just algorithm, you risk losing your being genuine. You risk losing your art form. You risk losing what you're doing everything for. And I don't know, but I would rather have 500 followers that get something out of my tweets every day, or something like once a month, what have you, versus having 5 million and I only interact with a handful of them. I'd rather have that kind of impact. Does that make sense?
Totally, Mindrunner. You're in what you say always goes back to this article by I think he was the former editor-in-chief of Wired magazine, Kevin Kelly, created this essay called "1,000 True Fans," and it's still out there online, I think. The concept that you really only need those 1,000 true fans to really make any product or make any kind of concept work. These are people that listen to you, that pretty much trust you, and that are willing to even, if need be, buy from you if you have a product. Like they are people that they are your people. They are your tribe, the people that understand you. And not everyone's going to understand you. Like, again, people, I think if they follow me for only sports content when I started in 2021, they're not going to be very happy with me right now. It's sort of like I'm kind of going through like a shedding of my skin, like a snake in a sense. And I mean that in the best way possible. But my profile, just the way I'm presenting myself, it has gone through some changes in the past, even 3 to 4 months. So that's just the reality of it. And I want people to see that, again, if I resonate with you, fantastic. If not, that's okay too. Like there's an unfollow button for a reason. Like you can also mute me or whatever you want to do. Totally fine. But you're spot on, Mindrunner. I mean, like it's all about those genuine connections. And I think that's part of the reason why I've bonded so well with you, with Amber, with Ben, with Blaze, Jay, all of them, because it's about that more genuine connection versus just a transactional kind of feeling, right? Or like a surface level feeling. It's more of, these are people who, like, I could, if they called me up in the middle of the night, I'd probably take the call. Like that's the thing. Like, whereas like, I mean, if I knew other people on that level, sure, maybe, but like, these are people that like we spend almost every night or every other night, it seems like, in spaces. So it's like, I know at least something about them, so there's that.
And it's interesting. We talk about, not focusing on the transactional nature of relationships and focusing on, building genuine relationships. It's like, not seeking a friendship because they have more followers or they are going to get me, they're going to get me an in with Krispy Kreme donuts. I'm just using an example, but, like when I was in sales and you are in sales, just to kind of a little background is I worked for Enterprise and I worked for a rental company. So, but I started out with the rental side and then I moved into the car sales side. We sold their used rental cars. Okay. And the more and more, it was at a time where at the time I shifted into that position. Buying a used rental car was very competitive than buying a brand new car because there was the depreciation. As soon as you drove a new car off the lot, it dropped. Whereas you have a well-maintained used car, it made sense. And Enterprise, whatever. They pride themselves on no negotiation. There's no haggling. This is the price. Yeah. What started to happen though was as the auto market shifted, and it got to a point where you could buy a brand new Camry for cheaper than a used Camry, a 1-year-old used Camry.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the car sales department got real shady, real cutthroaty, and they started becoming very, very much like what the stereotypical used car lot. Like what you would see in a movie where the guy, hey, come down to Wacky Bob's inflatable arm guy. And it got real weird to the point where I was put into some positions where they wanted me to compromise my integrity and even one time lie to a bank, and I refused. No. So I got out of that. But so my question kind of to you, is it possible, and again, this could be just people's stigmas with when they hear the word sales, but is it possible to be an honest salesperson?
It is. And then here's the thing. I think people will buy more from you and more often. They'll be more loyal to you if you're willing to be honest with them and upfront. The way of the way of the past, right? The way of selling in the past, it doesn't work anymore. Like the old, used car salesman approach doesn't work anymore. I don't believe it does, at least. And my research, my evidence indicates that it's just not. You don't build any of that long-term trust. It goes back to what we keep harping on, which is that transactional nature of a relationship. I've taken negotiations classes. That was probably my favorite class in business school, if not one of them. And it comes down to, being willing to put your cards on the table in a structured way, but not lying about things. Like, you're not lying in order to get a deal. You're not lying to get a better rate on a car. Like, it's not that. It's, here's kind of what's going on. Here's what I'm willing to pay for. Like, there's certain kind of components of selling that if you're not being truthful, then it's going to come back to bite you. And there's that famous quote, I think it was Mark Twain. It was something along the lines of, I always tell the truth. That way you never have to remember anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, it's kind of that's something that resonated with me even as a kid. It was like, I could lie about something, but then I have to remember what I said and not lie. That wasn't true. Like, whereas, like, if that adds like something else to my brain that has to I have to like keep that in my head. I'm too old to do that. Like, I'm in my 40s now. Like, my brain, I can't even remember what I had for lunch yesterday. Here I am, like, I think you can be an honest salesman. Absolutely. I think it's, honesty and integrity are two hugely valuable, hugely important concepts that are probably undervalued right now. But I guarantee you that if you were trying to sell me on something, like whether it's just like a training, like a video training package for something, right? Like, you're just trying to teach me how to use this app that we're on, and you explained the benefits of it, and you explained how much it would cost, and you explained kind of what the money would go to, like, to improving your studio setup, like all of that would, and if that was true, right? If it was like verifiable and true, or if there was like evidence like that I could trust you, I'd buy it. Like, that's the thing, is that, like, you just have to have some sort of as a buyer, you have to have some sort of belief that what's being said isn't going to come out as a lie, because nobody likes to be embarrassed, like, later on down the road and say, oh, I bought from that person, or I did that, and turns out that, I was misled. Nobody likes to be on that receiving end. And I think that you can be an honest salesman. It has to be intentional, though. I think if you there are too many incentives in the world these days to just try to hit your number and or your quota and keep going and keep making more and more money. You probably heard this phrase in sales, Mindrunner, but it's something about salespeople being coin operated. Like a vending machine. Like, they only do the things that are going to bring them more money. And I don't buy that either. Like, nowadays you need to be willing to do some other tasks in sales that are not necessarily revenue generating for you or profit generating for you. They need, like, these are more like writing handwritten notes and thank you notes to people saying thanks for buying. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do in sales to make it more human, and I think that's what's missing, is the human touch.
Well, and I think that goes back to something that was considered, I think, the old school handshake mentality, which actually, I think, it resonates with people today. People are probably craving that mindset. You talk about the handwritten notes. You are still building your business. You are, you're doing those handwritten notes because you want to grow your business. But what I think it is it's versus that when you've got this quota right in your face versus the long term. I think true sales, building a business, building a book of business is long term. I had customers that came looking for me years after I had sold them their car, or they were sending people to the place because of how I treated them. I had a great story where this guy, they would find, this guy found a car for his mom. Her mom died. Her mom's car died, and it was this Hyundai. And she swore she'd never get a Hyundai again. She swore the one car she'll never drive is a Hyundai. And her son found this Ford Focus online. So he came to look at the Ford Focus, and he brought her with her. And just so happens on the lot, we had a used Hyundai. and it was the only car on the lot that had roll down windows versus the power windows. And it was green. It looked like Kermit the Frog green. We called it the Kermit Mobile. Guy comes in to look at the Focus, and she sits down. And this is something I think is very critical to honest sales, because is qualifying your customer. Because I think what that does is it shows it shows that you're listening to your customer. That's where you ask them those questions of what they're looking for, so that you can match what they're looking for to what you have. And you got to, I think it's the duty on the salesperson, not in an antagonistic way, but to really push and really ask those qualifying questions because someone might come in and say, I need a 7-passenger SUV. And you say, what do you need it for? Tell me, what do you need it for? Well, I've got 7 kids, and we need to travel back and forth to San Diego. And you're like, okay. And you start talking to them, and you start to realize that they just want an SUV because it looks nice. But really what makes sense for them is a minivan. You get to that point. Well, just really quickly about the story is, as I'm talking to her, her favorite color was green. And she had this phobia of automatic windows because she's afraid that if she drove off the Golden Gate Bridge, she wouldn't be able to roll down the window. Yeah. So I talked to her, and I said, I've got another car I'd like you to look at, but here's the one thing, is it's a Hyundai. But before I did, I told her it's green, it's got manual windows, it's blah, 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 it's all this stuff. And so she kind of was a little weary, but because I told her all the benefits it had, we went over there. She said, all right, well, I'll look at it. She test drove it immediately. Of course, the son he's like, let's look at the Focus. She got behind the wheel. We drove like 10 feet, and she's like, I like this. And we drove around, and then we got in the Focus. She didn't even drive it. She goes, nope, that's the car. So she came in saying, I don't want a Hyundai. I'll never buy another Hyundai. She left with a Hyundai. Now, that's, some people could say that's shady. It's not shady at all, because if she wanted the Focus after all those questions, that's fine. But it was like, I was listening to what she was saying. And sometimes, and I think we need to do this in life with people, is sometimes what people are saying, if you genuinely want to listen, if you're genuinely listening, it's kind of it goes right back to the beginning of our conversation of, well, why do you believe that? What makes you say that? Or how, explain to me what brought you to that decision. And I think that's with people, it's like you said, learn by asking questions. You learn, you become, that goes with that being genuine. And I really believe being an honest salesperson is not giving them whatever they say they want. It's giving them what they need despite what they think they want. Or maybe it matches, but I mean, that's not necessarily, that could be mutually exclusive, but it's, and I think that's important. Like in school systems, parents come in and they want to advocate for their kids. They want to advocate. They're afraid of the school taking advantage of their kid. And so they come in. So a lot of not all parents, but I'm saying there's a lot of parents that come in and they're already got their guard up, and administrators tend to fold and go, whatever you say, just don't go and complain to the superintendent. I don't want to get fired. But I think that's a mistake. You've got to listen to the parents, listen to their concerns, and then guide them to why they're to alleviate their concerns. Because if you just sit there and whatever you say, it's not only validating their fears, and it goes back to that, you're not strong enough to stand up to me, so are you going to stand up for my kid kind of thing. So I think that it goes back to being genuine and being a genuine listener and learning through those asking questions, like you said, is to truly be effective.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple notes while you were talking, Mindrunner, and one of them was active listening, right? We're talking about that right now.
I'm sorry, what?
Well done. I see what you did there. Active listening is definitely, excuse me, it's one of those key concepts that, it's possibly, again, one of those things that's underappreciated nowadays, but it's so important. I talked to Jay about this recently on the podcast. that when you're engaging in active listening, it's a sign of respect as well. And you're also recognizing what's being said and when it doesn't match kind of what's being done, right? Through active listening, you can tell when something doesn't quite match what's being said or done, right? Like you can kind of see these things, and nonverbal communication can help, like even when we're talking right now, right? And so I also wrote down the word iceberg, and I saw this image, and you know what I'm talking about here.
Yep.
The idea of the beliefs and assumptions are what are underneath the surface of the water, and you're not ever going to see that. You need to ask those questions to get there, to understand, to surface those beliefs and assumptions, because everything on the surface, you already see that. It's obvious. People make those points pretty clear to you. They'll say, this is what I want. This is why I want it. This is what, this has to be green. It has to have this. Sure. Now, or like, I need a 7-passenger,
Tahoe or something. Yeah.
Tahoe, exactly. I need this because I have 7 kids. It's like, okay, now let's go below the surface and figure out, okay, like, what makes you say that, right? What makes it, or what makes you think that Tahoe is the right fit for you? And let people start to give you their assumptions and beliefs, and then when things start to kind of don't match kind of the truth of things, you can start to help them understand what's going on, because those are the 3 most powerful words, I think, for me, going after business school, going into my new career in sales. It's helped me understand. Those are the 3 most powerful words that I've used in the past 5 or 6 years in my career, because it's a pivot from what I used to do. I didn't do anything related to sales. It was more languages, right? I mentioned that earlier. But the idea of help me understand has been so important. I almost throw that into every call that I'm on nowadays, and I still do. I mean, I've been doing it for years, and the reality is that, like, I don't understand 90% of what is being said on some of these phone calls that I'm on with people that I work with, and that's okay. Like, I need somebody to say, this is what this means, and this is what we're trying to do, right? And so, like, if people are willing to help you understand, I think that's also a huge sign of respect, and it's a sign that they're listening, right? If they're listening to you actively, if they're trying to help you through something with your best interests in mind, then help me understand is a concept that they will appreciate, and they will be willing to do that.
And those three words are so powerful, because it kind of ties back to yes and, because you're not discrediting what they believe. Like you could disagree with them on something, and this is something great with Thanksgiving coming up. If you got relatives that usually get into arguments over politics, like my folks do, my old man's bad too, because like he's so obsessed in his. I love him to pieces. He's a very smart man, but like my aunt posted a picture of her granddaughter going to some flower festival, and then he replies, well, don't let Joe Biden see her at the flower. And then, of course, my cousin gets into like, you're just another one of those MAGA. Blah, blah. And I'm just like, just say she looks beautiful. She's a great job. Go for it. That's all you need to say. You don't need to turn.
He looks great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but I think that it's interesting, because when you say help me understand, you're not discrediting, you're validating their belief, but you're explaining to them, I'm not there yet. I don't understand it yet. Help me understand. And then that puts them in the spot where they got to explain. And then one of 2 things are going to happen. Either they're going to present you with data that you hadn't considered, and then you can go from there with that, or they're going to struggle to really explain it, and it's going to make them really start to really think about their belief. Now, they may still, in the process of explaining, start to really think, okay, I think I am right, but or they might just start to crumble, or they might just say, well, screw you, man, I'm not talking to you. They're going to have multiple different things, but by doing that, you're not saying you're wrong, I don't believe you. You're saying, help me understand.
Exactly. It like you're spot on. You're trying to get them to articulate how they got to that point, and it's not a judgment call. and it's so, that's why it's so powerful, and it's so important to use that phrase. At least for me, it's been. I don't know if other people use that, or if that's applicable to other industries, but I know for me that's been powerful. And I will say this: you mentioned this earlier. You talked about matching the needs to what's being said or what's being asked for, and kind of figure out like how do I meet those needs with what we have available. It's also worth remembering that sometimes people don't know what they want.
Yeah.
When they go to a car dealership or wherever, they may not know, but they have an idea, and it might turn out that what they're looking for, you cannot meet those needs, and it's okay to tell them that. And that's where you go back to that trust as a salesperson. In sales, if you're willing to tell somebody, you know what, I don't have something for you. I cannot sell you something. It would be wrong for me to do that, to put you in something that would not be the right fit for you. And that's how you're going to build that long-term trust, because it's a long-term thing, right?
Yeah.
I said this earlier. You're thinking short-term, if you're thinking transactional, by all means, get that person into any car imaginable, hit your number, hit your quota, mind runner, you're good to go, right? But like, that's not sustainable. Right. And they'll remember this. So you sell them a bucket of bolts and they drive it off the lot, and then they're, in repairs and, nonstop, just up to their ears in debt because of this car. What have you really done? Right. Yeah. I mean, short term, you met your number. Long term, they're not coming back to you. Like that's a one-time deal. It's worth remembering these things, right? Like, it's okay to say, I don't have something for you and I cannot help you, but maybe this person can. And that's the one thing I think it's like a lost art, is the willingness to say, I don't have this, or I don't have the answer, but here's something I can do, or here's something I can direct you to this, or I would encourage, like, offering some sort of help beyond the, get your deal through the finish line. I think that's something that we could probably sit here and talk about all day, because it's easy to critique and say, oh, well, I don't have something for you, or hey, it's just easy to kind of think about the negative aspect of not being able to close a deal or not being able to meet somebody's needs. But if you're saying something like, I cannot do this, but here's something that might work, at least you're being transparent, you're being honest, you're being open. And if they say, yeah, I might give that a look, what you've done is you basically said to them, I want to add value to you no matter what. Here's what I'm trying to do here. And again, thinking more long term, I think that's something we could all probably benefit from a little more.
Absolutely. You're not selling a car, you're selling you. You're selling you. And I've actually had that happen. I had a guy, I was at the Novato car sales office, Northern California, and Northern Cal. This is just above Marin County, and Marin County, very hoity-toity. If you know anything about Marin County, that their Whole Foods is like their food line. It's like that's their Piggly Wiggly. They're very, but I mean, they're great people out there. Don't get me wrong. But this guy comes in to buy a car from me, and he clearly, I mean, he's done the research, and this guy comes in, and he clearly, like, he was looking at a brand new Camry, and he wanted to look at this other car. And after qualifying and showing him cars, it was clear that I could not provide him the best deal, and no matter what. And it wasn't one of those things. But we just had the conversation. Say, I'd appreciate your business, but it does sound like this is good. And he almost was a little bit surprised that I was like, it wasn't an easy walkout. Like he was like, I really tried to see what he was looking for.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got to a point where I was like, honestly, I feel like that's probably a better deal for you, but I appreciate you coming by him. And he was surprised by that.
Yeah.
About a month later, he brings his daughter in and he bought 2 cars from me over the next 6 months. He also came by after I had left. He came by and brought a third relative by, but I wasn't there anymore. But it was because of the way he was treated, and because that's what he remembered. And now we're coming back to the big thing: same with followers on our social media, or it's with all of this kind of stuff. Is that happiness and success is a long-term game. It's a marathon. If you're going for that instant gratification, I mean, I could go on right now and buy a bunch of bots to up my account, but that's temporary, and it actually is going to hurt me in the long run.
Absolutely.
Whereas building that genuine rapport, building your business, building the reason for people, I'm doing this podcast because I want it to be a reason for people to want to tune in. I want it to be something people want to listen to or watch. And it's not just to get views. And if I have 500 people getting something out of it, if I get one person getting something out of it, that's a success for me. And I think that's where it really comes down to is happiness and success, which are intertwined. If you really define what it truly is, I think it's a marathon. And I think it's being genuine, and it's you're selling you, and it's not even really selling. You're building value in you rather than anything you're selling.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mind Runner. And just go back to that book I was talking about. It's called To Sell Is Human by Daniel. Again, nice. And look that one up. It's worth a read. It's a quick read, I think, for those of us who have been in sales. But the idea being that we all are in sales, whether we want to believe it or not. And the thing is, happiness and success, again, long-term place. Think longer term. Think bigger picture. It's not going to come from likes. Likes aren't going to ultimately be sustainable. Nobody's going to remember how many likes you got on a post, last year when you're, if we're in a retirement home in 20, 30, 40 years, nobody's going to remember that stuff. Like nobody's going to remember the number of reposts or retweets you got on a specific, like nobody's going to remember that stuff. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And that's kind of a cliched quote, I'm sure. But the reality is there's this thing about how nobody's going to care how you feel until you show them or they feel that you care about. There's a phrase like that along those lines. But and again,
look it up, Jamie. Look it up.
Yeah, look it up, Jamie. Please look it up. Jamie will get back to us with that. But the idea, people want to know that you care about them, and once you've established that, then you're going to find that they're also going to be there's mutually invested in you as well. And so I think that's kind of what it comes down to exactly. But we can do anything short term, and that's not, again, that's just an antithesis to what I am on social media, which is, I want to be as genuine as I'm willing to be. I'll interact. I'll get people to share about themselves. I'll share a little bit about myself. If we end up being kindred spirits, we might, I've met, like I said, I've met almost a dozen people from the app. I met somebody in February in Rhode Island. Actually, I was up there with family, and I was able to break away for a little bit, and we met for lunch at the best Italian sub restaurant in the state. It's amazing though. It's these are things I never would have even known to go there, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing. And I met somebody who lives here locally he's blind, legally blind. And I didn't know that until we met in person. But now we meet almost every month for barbecue, a barbecue restaurant. There's so much that we could do as humans to kind of spread ourselves in a meaningful way. And I think that's kind of the longer term happiness for me. Success for me is being able to see people in real life and after having kind of some sort of a common bond and on social media. And that's kind of my longer term vision, is to meet more people from this app, because I've learned a lot from people already. I've bonded with people about similar issues and struggles that I've had in my life. I've been divorced a couple times and have a bunch of baggage that goes along with that. Still dealing with it. And so I know some people think that that's a huge problem. Don't want to interact with that guy, but I'm also happily married, 2 kids.
Yeah,
things are good. Life is good. I'm not complaining. I'm just explaining that life comes at you fast, comes at you hard. It can be tough. I struggle every day with certain things, and we have to find ways to elevate one another. And that's what I try to do. That's kind of my reason for being on the app.
Life moves pretty fast, Ferris. If you don't stop and look around,
you just might miss it. That's right.
I just have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
Of course, I mean, we could talk for another 3 hours. More specific about you, I'd like you to share a little bit of personal details with me.
Yeah.
What is your favorite candy though? What is your favorite? What are some of your favorite candies that you do enjoy?
Yeah, I'll open myself up for a little bit of humiliation here, but Sour Patch Kids is number 1. 2, probably Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
Okay, Reese's.
Yeah, and then 3, I would go with Snickers, and then maybe Kit Kat 4, and then 5. Let's throw in Skittles. I think that's probably my top 5 for candies.
What is? Help me understand what makes you like the Sour Patch Kids.
I see what you did there, Mind Runner. Help you understand. It's actually the mix of the tang of like the over the top sugar on the surface, and then the sweetness. It kind of it's like a nice little, like, once you get through that sugar on the surface, you have something that's like not as sweet afterward. I think it's that initial kind of flavor for me, and my wife will tell you this too. Like, I need to have flavor in everything. I need there needs to be some sort of overpowering flavor on everything I eat. And so I have sriracha sauce that's on the table 24/7. I used to put it away, but it's like, why am I putting it away? Like, I'll put it on whatever I'm having. If I'm having eggs for breakfast, it goes on the eggs. If I'm having, if I'm having a sandwich, I'll squirt a little bit onto the sandwich. I'm good to go. If we're having, meatloaf for dinner, guess what? Works really well. Like, you'd be surprised how versatile that is. So for me, I need to have a flavor burst with every meal, and Sour Patch Kids, I think, even on the candy side of things, it does that for me.
And do Skittles as well? That same kind of taste?
Same kind of thing. It kind of, I think, but it's like the reverse. I think it's like you start off with like not having, like, it's like the shell is not really the sweet part, I think, or as sweet as the inside. So same thing.
And what about like the Reese's, Snickers, and Kit Kat? Because those aren't really powerful flavors. That's more chocolate.
Yeah, for me, I think those are more of probably mouthfeel. Now that I think about it, I mean, I think the Reese's, I think there's a special, that's a special kind of flavor pairing for me, with chocolate and peanut butter, and I don't know. There's a high dose of sweetness in that sugar, or in that chocolate, I'll say. So I would say that's why I like that. The Snickers, it's more of like, it's a substantive crunch bite. Like there's a mouthfeel to that as well. And I think what else did I say? Kit Kat. Again, it's the crunchiness. So like, there's still something kind of unique about when you take a bite of that, it's, it makes a noise even, so there's something about that as well.
Gotcha. So if it's a candy that's sweet and it's got that mouth feel to it, and you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Oh yeah, man, you're taking lots of notes, man. I mean, are you trying to build a new
all right,
product or something?
I'm totally Ben Franklin in the candy corn here, but
I see what you're doing. Yeah.
Now, I just thought it'd be funny just to kind of go through that, like the whole like, here's what if there was a candy that was sweet and had that mouth feel. It didn't necessarily have the crunch, but it was seasonal, and it actually had, and it was something readily available.
You're trying to really get me to say I like candy corn, Minor. I know where we're going with this. Like, I'm taking notes too, man. Like, I got a bunch of them here.
Well, help me understand why you don't like candy corn.
All right. Well done. I mean, I could tell you why. I mean, the reality is that it's maybe I haven't had really. I'll start off by saying I'm open to trying it again.
Good.
But when I've had it in the past, it's very much waxy, and I don't think that's like my favorite mouthfeel is eating wax. Candy wax is not my favorite thing. I remember those candy lips they used to have, right?
Oh,
those wax lips, or the wax kind of things that they'd sell sometimes. I think around Halloween as well, and they were disgusting. Like I think there was like candy wax, like other stuff too that like I didn't like any of that growing up, and I think it's just too much of that kind of similarity. that I can't get beyond that. Like it must be a childhood trauma thing related to candy that I can't get over. But it's not a. I mean, I don't judge people who like it. I think it's near the bottom of the barrel for me. Like if there's only candy corn left over at and that's all there is in the house. But we've gone through all the other candy. Then sure, I might have some, but like it's not my first.
If you had to choose between candy corn or circus peanuts.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, did you see that post I made, Mindrunner? It was you have to eat like 2 pounds of this, and you get $5,000 or $50,000 if you can eat 2 pounds of this in one sitting. And it was like black licorice, circus peanuts, candy corn, or like Peeps, or the 4 options.
Black licorice for me though. I love black licorice. I'm crazy, but here's the thing, and this could be part of. Because there is such thing as taste aversion. You mentioned the wax lips, and I don't know if you ever tried those little wax colas where you got to drink the thing inside. Those are nightmares for me too.
Yeah.
But it's possible that the quality of the candy corn you had was subpar, because there are differences. Brock's makes a very, very enriching flavored candy corn versus your standard run of the mill, probably recycled from 2 Halloweens ago candy corn. Licorice for me, like I get Australian licorice. I have it brought in from Amazon. They get the thick Wally Willoughby. Shout out to Wally Willoughby's licorice. Hey. It's tremendous. And they have multiple flavors too. They don't just have the black licorice flavor. But it has a stronger taste to it. It doesn't quite taste like a Red Vine or a Twizzler kind of black licorice flavor to it. But it is possible that your aversion to candy corn could be influenced by the negative experience you had with other waxy candies. Are you open to trying candy corn again?
I am. I think I'm willing to it. I'm open to it. I will say there's also a Thanksgiving dinner candy corn style. I don't know if you've seen that meme. I'll post it actually later today, and we'll see. And I'll make sure to tag you in it, or tag you in the comments so you can take a look at it. But it's like a bag of Brock's candy corn, but it's called Thanksgiving dinner or something like that. And it has like a stuffing. It has the cranberry sauce. It has the turkey. Like, it looks pretty disgusting to me. I already don't like candy corn, and you're making candy corn that's called Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh, wow.
It just sort of. It's got to be fake. Although somebody said they saw it in the store a couple of years ago, and it was something they'll never buy again. So, I mean, again, I don't want to. Here's the thing. I'll try it again probably this season. I think sometime in the next couple of weeks I might have a little more candy corn, and I'll report back to you, Mindrunner. How about that?
That sounds good. Did you see the picture of the candy corn dog from where they mashed up the candy corn and wrapped the hot dog in the candy?
I think I have, and I think I saw somebody also make a pizza, and they made it look like as if it was like a pineapple pizza, but it was actually a candy corn pizza. It was disgusting. Like people are really bored these days online, Miner. I'm not gonna lie. Like, where these ideas are coming from, I have no clue. But more power to you if you're that creative. I would never do that.
I'd love to live by the philosophy of try anything once, but I think there's some things that I don't have to try it. I have a pretty good idea that's not gonna work out. When I was 9 years old, I had this idea that if I combine all my favorite foods together, it would taste good. It just so happens my favorite foods were Lucky Charms, Parmesan cheese, cashews, and what was the other one? It was Lowry seasoned salt and milk. And so because I wasted all this food, my dad made me sit there and eat it. Yeah. I only got 2 bites, and that was it. Because
what could go wrong with that? I mean,
I thought it was all my favorite food. It was nasty. We could do a whole separate show just talking about a certain bit of professional wrestling. I do want to highlight some of my favorites. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Thunder Rosa.
Absolutely. I saw her. She's amazing. Yeah.
What I love about her is that lifting everybody up mentality. You know, she's got a lot of the current roster at AEW are kind of her little proteges. You know, Sky Blue, Will, a lot of these folks that came in, and I do think that there is something and two lifting each other up, and really, we
Yeah.
talk about Jamie. It's a Joe Rogan reference. What the stuff that Joe Rogan is doing for comedy in the Austin area, I think can be done on Twitter, can be done on social media, where he's taking, instead of, comedy and entertainment being a cutthroat business, it could be a, hey, let's all succeed together business. And I feel very strongly about that. You find kindred spirits that support you, but aren't your echo chamber.
That's right.
And if you find that, you can really have that long-term lasting success and truly feel, and success not in how many billions of whatever, more so success in what you have, and that gratitude is worth it, is worth making, has value. It's like quality versus quantity.
Spot on, Mindrunner. I think just going back to Thunder Rosa real quick, she I think I told you this before offline, but she wrestled Mercedes Martinez at a Dynamite in February of 2022, and she was dressed up as, I think, the character that Uma Thurman played in Kill Bill. She was in this all yellow. You remember that event? Mm-hmm. That was here in Nashville, and they spilled out of the ring and went into the crowd during that match. I think it was like a no holds barred match, actually.
Yeah.
They spilled out of the ring, and they actually were right in front of me. Like, physically, I could have touched them. Like, they were right in front of me in because I was not the front row, but across from the hard cam. Totally, like, they were like, the camera was on me. I like tried to get out of the way, but she's going back to she's just an inspiration for those who actually pay attention, right, to these things, because it's easy to kind of think about pro wrestling and say, well, that's just a job that day in, day out, it's all they do, and that's it. But there's so much more to every single one of these people that, again, I encourage people to do their own homework about these people's backstories. I don't know if I told you this, but like, I was friends with I grew up with or around, and I wrestled in a previous life, the wrestler, you might know him as Chris Masters from WWE.
Uh-huh.
He and I there's, again, not going to say where you can find this, but there's a certain website that you can search for these things for videos. And there may be a video of me and him going, when we were in our late teens, trying to beat each other up in a park somewhere. But again, the cops were there. Like, they didn't realize that it was backyard wrestling, faking it all. But it was, but yeah, I mean, like, these are people that have lives, and that are that I'll just say this: competition is absolutely important, and it's a good thing for pro wrestlers. So, AEW, WWE, wherever you stand, ROH, any of those, if there's the more lucrative options that exist, the better for these people's lives. So just want to throw it out there. And I mean, the comedy mothership thing and Joe Rogan and kind of him trying to elevate others. Again, I said this earlier, like, at the end of the day, what do you consider a fulfilling day? Like, what do you consider being fulfilled? Like, I think everyone should step back, take notes, write down, like, what would make you feel more fulfilled, or what is it that fulfills you? What is it that fills your cup? What is it that makes you inspired, that ignites you, that lights you up? Like, what are those things that do that to you? Because some people don't know the answer to that. And I think Joe knows what actually, I think he's thinking more long-term, longevity, how to elevate others. And I think that does fulfill him at the end of the day. And I think Thunder Rosa, the same thing. I think what she's doing to help other people, other wrestlers, other, programs or things or organizations that she's probably affiliated with, like, she's probably doing so many other things that people don't even see, like, more than just a sliver of. And the reality is that these people are doing a lot because it inspires them and it motivates them to keep going. And again, hopefully this conversation is doing the same for somebody.
I hope so. The thing about Thunder Rosa is I don't know how she sleeps, because of course she's been injured, been on this road to recovery, but she's doing so much more. Like, she's involved with a lot of the outreach, and she's got her vlog, and she's doing a lot of promotional things here and there. She does Busted Open Radio. She's all
Taco
over the
Tuesday
place.
videos. I've seen the taco stuff she does.
Taco vlog. This is the taco vlog. I've seen
stuff. I love it. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, this has been to use RJ City. This has been you have ignited my light, and I hope you've ignited everybody else's light here on Mental Health Mondays. Chris, any final words of positivity to our listeners for today?
Sure. Thanks, Mindrunner, first off, and I like the RJ City reference. He's a hilarious dude. But I'll say this: everyone nowadays is struggling with something. Don't feel like you are alone. Reach out to people. Reach out to either family, friends. Find me online at Positively Chris on X. DM me. If Mindrunner, I'm not going to speak for you, but Absolutely. The reality is, I mean, like, I think there are options to have those conversations, and I would encourage people, if you're having a hard time, especially nowadays. I think there's been a lot more polarization over the past, we'll say, week or so online. I've seen a lot more negativity being spread, and I'll say that it's important to remember that we are all human and we breathe the same air. We bleed the same blood. Like we have much more in common than most people realize. And I'm willing to be a listening ear. And I hope that people realize that they're not alone.
Absolutely. And with that, Positively Chris, thank you so much. This has been Mindrunner. Thank you for tuning in. Go out there and ask those genuine questions. Be an active listener, and find your happiness and success and what that means to you. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Catch new episodes of Mental Health Mondays every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Start your week off with a smile and some inspiration.